You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in sunny Northport, Florida. And it's absolutely gorgeous out there. We just got back from a tremendous trip over to Fort Lauderdale. And on our road trip over, we thought, holy crap, are we going to get rained out or what's going to happen? And I got to tell you, it was some of the most beautiful weather we've had for probably at least a year. It was nice and cool coming off the beach, but it was just enough sun to make you feel good about being out in a live concert for the weekend. So that was Tortuga over in Fort Lauderdale. And if anybody has a chance to go, I would highly recommend you take a good look at that venue because it's a lot of fun. A lot of good singers over there, a lot of songwriters over there. It's just a great weekend. But I've got a very special guest in the house today, Commissioner White. How are you doing?
Okay. Thank you, John, for inviting me.
Not a problem. It's always a pleasure having you on. You know, I love having the city commissioners on, get everybody's point of view out there and kind of give your perspective. And we were talking a little bit about being at the office and how things go. And you're probably no different than everybody else as far as that goes. But being in the environment of City Hall, now that you're kind of got your feet wet, how does it feel when you go into the meetings now compared to when you first started?
Well, the first thing that really struck me, I knew it was coming, but is the restrictiveness of not just being able to pick up a phone call and ask a simple question of somebody. And I find that to be, and I understand the reason for it. And I also know that our city manager, Jerome, he is working, I think, to get a system, some kind of a coordinating system. So when somebody sends an email to all the commissioners, you know, we have to reply singly, of course, and we have no idea what anybody else has said if someone's already addressed it. So it's like 5 times somebody would get a response or the city manager, and this way it would track whatever that is so that we would know, okay, somebody picked up on it and it's gone to whoever should be handling it, and that is going to be so much better. But I find that really frustrating when people call me and I just have a simple question and I can't just ask that. And there's also that line, because some of the things that I do are through People for Trees, and they are People for Trees related. So I send an email through my personal email, like somebody did a road cleanup, one of the roads that we adopted, and I would always just send an email to Julie saying we did the road, so we get credit for it. Right. But that's, as Alice White, People for Trees type thing. But I have to always think twice about, can this be misconstrued in a different way, So I don't like that part of it at all. And that's a challenge. Yeah.
It's got, I was going to say, it has to be a challenge because you kind of have to keep those two things separate, right?
Yeah. And I really, it's ironic because the more I think somebody has been involved in the community and has feelers out there, the more restrictive that's going to be, such as when I dealt with all the things with the Tour de Northport that we just had. I mean, that's a lot of avenues that are impacted or that are affected. And I always had to think about, okay, and I have to make sure this is through People for Trees, not through commission. But even in times, I had somebody else from the organization say, hey, you make this phone call, you do this, because I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm giving somebody direction or overstepping my boundaries as a commissioner.
It has to be a tough thing to kind of balance.
Right.
Is it more frustrating, or is it the fact that you want to forge ahead and get things done?
Yeah, it really is.
You know what I'm talking about. I see it as this moment where you go, crap, I just want to get this done. Yes. And you're holding back, right?
Yeah, because I'm very goal oriented. Again, I was a former algebra teacher. I have great respect for procedure and process. And you get to a finish point and you can start a new project. And that's the only way I've been able to balance doing different projects at the same time, because I was able to boom, 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 get through it. Okay. And here I find, it's still here on my list of things to do because it's got to go through the channels. And I do understand and respect the reason for that. Because the other part of that is if you don't have those checks and balances, we get back into what we had decades ago, and is referred to as the old boys network, that all these deals are made without anybody else even being involved, and that's the extreme end of it. There's got to be a better balance, I think, between the two.
And you're not by yourself when you're doing this stuff either, because every city commissioner has something else that they're involved in.
Yes, right.
And everybody's, when you first come into this, you're learning so much on the fly on other things. This is just one thing that you were so used to doing,
right?
That it's kind of second nature, right?
Right. Like just before I came on with you, I had a phone call. Somebody called me as Alice White, the tree lady, about a land clearing that took place, and she's calling me as a tree lady, but I'm also thinking, okay, I know what's going on, in our land development code, and I'm answering her as what I already know as the tree lady. And but I'm not going to send anything to city staff saying, hey, what's going on here? But I gave her a phone number. This is where you call. So I just have to always keep that in mind when I am talking to people, to give them information based on what hat I'm wearing at that time.
Do you feel like your hat is getting larger?
I have a whole big collection. I have a fire hat now too. We
nice.
Fire hats last week, and it says city commissioner on it. And I sent a picture of me wearing it to my son. I thought that was really, really nice of the fire department to do that. So I guess whenever we go on out in the field in some, dangerous situation, we can put on our official fire hats. But even that, we had gotten an email about, we can keep the hat, but it's considered a gift and it's over $200. And I'm thinking, it's a hat, but I understand the reason for that too.
Yep. There's a lot of checks and balances there, aren't there?
Yeah, right. And I think that, people are aware somewhat of those checks and balances, but I don't think they really fully understand, because I didn't fully embrace the, how that really impacts everything you're trying to do.
So I actually, in looking at it from your perspective, because I really didn't think, I knew that there were rules like that were out there. I just didn't know how controlled they were. So obviously there's some oversight there that kind of protects you guys too, right?
Right. Sure.
Which is a good thing.
Oh yeah. Right.
And we've got with all the things that happen, it's kind of good to make sure somebody kind of has your back when it comes to something like that, because a small gift like that could actually blow up into something major, right?
Right. Something seemingly innocent, and but somebody can make a big deal about it. And so it's good that somebody did question it. I never would have thought of questioning it, first of all, I never even thought about keeping the hat. I just thought it was something, but they said we could. This is what this email said, and I just thought that was just for us to use while you're a commissioner, and then it gets passed along to the next person. That's just how I'm thinking, but because I really wouldn't have any use for it. It's one of those, I'm at that point in my life where I am giving things away,
I think we're all starting to pare down, right?
I've been doing that for years, especially after I ended my teaching career, because that, teachers are natural hoarders. You take everything, because eventually you are going to need all that stuff. And my entire garage was full of bins for different things that, I went through the year in school. And then, in fact, I still have a lot of stuff in storage, that these math centers that I had, and tangrams. I don't know if you know what tangrams are, and the little 1 centimeter cubes. I got bins and bins, because I thought, well, maybe I'll do some math workshops or something. But there's going to come a point where I'm going to say, I'm not going to do any math workshops. Let
I'm
me
just
just donate the stuff to some other teacher or some.
I'm going to warn you. I don't think you're going to do it. I don't. I think you have your hands full already. And you know what? As much as you liked doing that kind of stuff, I think there's other things on your list that you want to get accomplished, aren't there?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely right.
So, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about surtax, because we've got some of that stuff coming up, and I don't really know that the city as a whole, we've got a lot of new people in town now. Can you kind of explain what the surtax is and how that affects the budget of what goes on in the city?
Yeah, yes, that's 1%. It's 1 penny, and that was tacked on to our county sales tax. When I first came here, I think that was in '89. They said that was first passed. I came here in 1990, and that was a new deal. So our sales tax is 7%, but that 1% is the surtax, and it's been there, and so it's not a new tax. And
Right.
I really learned the value of the surtax when I served on the tax oversight committee here in the city, and learned and saw how many projects and how many things are funded that are necessary things. They're not like fun things. Because when that was first proposed, it was proposed to be a tax for amenities, the things that always get pushed to the back because it's the fun stuff that you want to provide for your community, but you never have the money for it. However, today it's the nuts and bolts, what I call the necessities. For example, when I was on it 1 year, it was, I think, 22 police vehicles were replaced using that surtax money, because infrastructure has, the definition for infrastructure has been redefined, I think, a couple of times throughout that it's infrastructure is not just pipes in the ground anymore, or and roads, that it also can include vehicles, because it's anything that the life term is 5 years, I think is considered to be infrastructure. So that's why we can replace vehicles as an infrastructure item with surtax. And people need to realize, if we didn't have that, that means that'd be coming out of our general fund budget, and your taxes would be going up. Your property taxes would be going up. And also, what I also learned from that is that how money is banked. It isn't that here's your money for this year, it has to all be spent in this year. They have a project that gets put on the books, and that's what we did as commissioners, and it has a timeline that this is when we hope to put it into place. For example, the fire tower. That fire tower has been on the books for a number of years, and every year there'd be a little bit more added to it until it got to the point where, which was this year, that it's going to be built finally. Nice. So that's another thing I came to appreciate, that it isn't just a one-shot deal, and oops, that you can start banking that money and for future projects. And it's, again, it really is important when you want to plan. It's an essential part of planning for growth and for the needs of a community.
So let's talk about the growth side of things from your perspective now, compared to less than a year ago when you were sitting outside as a citizen. Your perspective now on what you've gone through to like set up budgets, set up planning for different projects. How do you work through those on matter of importance, and just from a personal level on how you feel?
Yeah, as a commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just really what is I put in what to me the priority is always quality of life for people and providing for amenities, because that ultimately is what is going to determine whether your community goes forward and has a higher level of quality or not. And it also follows my approach to being proactive rather than reactive to situations. That if you take care of people, and you know yourself, if you take care of yourself, that's the medical field finally got a hold of that if you take better care of yourself, you're less likely to utilize their services, which of course drive up rates. So let's create a really nice good climate for people, environment for them to live in and be happy where they live, and have a better social well-being, and that. So I always look at that first when we're looking at projects. Is how's this going to affect a person's quality of life? Can they just live their life? Can they just be happy where they're living without all of this intrusion? And how much is that intrusion going to impact their life? And how can we reduce that? Yes, things are going to happen that are going to cut into your existence, but can we minimize those impacts rather than saying let's just tolerate it? Because quite frankly, John, that's why most of us moved here, because those impacts just became greater till it got to the point where we say, I'm out of here. And so we moved to Florida.
Right.
And then and people here, you were just talking before, you were on the East Coast. We have a lot of people moving here from the East Coast of Florida.
Yes, we do.
And it's no wonder, because I went there, I think it was at least 20 years ago. I did a lighthouse, because in the summers I always took these extensive road trips because I had the summers off. So one summer it was to visit every lighthouse in Florida, and I started at the top northeast corner. And when we got to like Fort Lauderdale and Daytona, I just said, this is like New Jersey in the summertime. That's exactly what I said.
Well, I did the same thing this morning, because I got up and I saw the report for traffic, and I'm like, well, I can't wait to get back to Northport.
Yeah.
We just don't have that traffic like that.
Right. And it wasn't even
kind of blessed.
it wasn't even the traffic, the fact that, and you were there. So how often can you actually see the ocean? There's nothing but condos and high rises. And even when you're on the beach, there's seawalls. And I said, this isn't, this is not enjoyable to me. And it's sad, because it wasn't always like that. When you look at old pictures, in fact, there's some houses, I think it was Daytona we were in. There's some people, again, this was 20 years ago. I'm sure they've sold out since then, but there were houses that hadn't sold out to a developer, and you just saw how beautiful it must have been at one time when that was just nothing but houses. And I could see why people wanted to move there.
Well, we still have some touches of old Florida here. Even Northport, as fast as we're growing, it still has that really small town feel, where you tend to feel like you know everybody in town at some point. Inglewood's got a really good feel to it, and it's the old fishing town style. It's not overgrown, and the waters, they're beautiful over there.
Right.
Beaches, so we've got some even close to home here. And those, that's some of Inglewood is still Northport, correct?
Some of Inglewood is still Northport.
It's Northport city ordinance, right? There's isn't there a portion of, I shouldn't say Northport, Sarasota County.
Yes.
Sorry, I said that wrong. Sarasota County.
Yeah.
My correction.
Yeah, it's happened. Correct.
You're correct. And I don't think people really understand that either, but that dividing line is there, and and there is a difference.
Yes, there is. And you can also see the difference in development, especially in the way things went along with when you go to Englewood Beach, which of course is Charlotte County, and you're driving on, that must be Minnesota Beach Road, right? Is that what goes along the coast? And the first part is Charlotte County. And as soon as you when you're crossing the line into Sarasota County, because that's the Canopy Road, and all of a sudden it changes. They have motels and asphalt parking lots right up there. They preserve the character of that area, and subsequently that's why those property values are so much higher on that end. And people really make a point of saying they live in Sarasota County, Englewood, as opposed to
they do. It is, but you can tell, just like you can tell when you drive through our town now, because we've got some standards for the codes now that I think we're actually doing a really good job transitioning the old part of Northport and getting those up to date, getting the signs up to date. the colors of the buildings. We have that Mediterranean feel, right?
Yeah, and John, I'm not a fan of that. So if you don't want to talk about that, that's fine because I
I,
was not a
listen,
fan
I
of
see
the
it.
Mediterranean look when they proposed it. At all. Back then I said, I don't know what Mediterranean look has to do with Northport, Florida. I believe that they were just adopting that because other communities had, such as Venice and Naples and
Had a theme,
Sarasota, but that's because they have a Mediterranean connection. We
right?
don't have a Mediterranean connection. There was a small group of us that were advocating for the what's known as the Florida cracker style architecture with the tin roofs and the wraparound porches, and that is more, I thought, and I still do, in line with Northport. It was ranch land, and the cowboys roamed through here, and I thought that was more indicative of who we were.
See, I didn't know the two styles. I didn't really. I wasn't involved in that. That's one portion of it at that
Mhm.
time. But now that you bring that up, I actually think that would have been a really cool concept because nobody else has it.
Right, and I know why that was actually started because of, and I'll tell you, it was the auto parts store that went in on 41, um, right there by the shopping center that where the Goodwill is, and they're
Advance, advance, advance.
yes, right, and they were the first one to come in, and they brought, of course, their brand, which was yellow and red, and we had commissioners that said, "Oh man, we got to do something about this because you're going to have all this, these color schemes coming in. It's going to look ticky tacky." That was actually the words that they were using, and so they had to come up with something because you can't just say you can't do that, but you can. So they had to come up, I know, with something that would be a conforming look, all along 41, and that's why they went for the Mediterranean. But they could have adopted other styles other than that. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask this because somebody's probably going to ask it. Do you think that'll ever change, or now that that's been adopted, do you think it's going to stay with that theme since all these companies are doing it?
Uh, I don't know. I'd like to see it change, but I don't think it's anything that other commissioners would want to press for because that would be a major difference. It is on my list of things to do to possibly bring up as an alternative for building. Have an option. I don't know if that's even possible. See, these are the things that I don't know as a new commissioner. Can you do that in a code? Can you have give options rather than the code pretty much says you have to do this, but can you have choices? I know.
Well, and I'm glad you're talking about codes because there are some codes that need to be cleaned up, and kind of restructured. But do you guys look at things like that, when you're at workshops and different things?
Yes, like something like that I would have in my notes. So when the chapters are coming up, I say, okay, is this where I get to talk about this? So that's what I'm doing because I have found that there are things that are come up in the code in areas that I never would have thought that's where it would be in the code.
Really?
I don't know why.
So you're getting stumped too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because other people are getting stumped too.
Right. And the thing is, it does have a flow. And, when I see it, I say, oh, okay, now I understand why it's here. But I had to go in like through the back door to find that. But somebody who's saying, hey, I want to find out about putting in a dock or something, like, where is that? And now I understand where it is, why it is where it is. But if you don't know that, yeah, it seems very convoluted, and I can understand why people will always feel like, why can't I just get a straight answer here?
Well, let me ask you this: what does it take to let's just I don't want to pick one code, but let's just say we are working on a code. What does it take to get it cleaned up? I mean, constructively, is it more difficult than we think it is?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. The concerns have to be out. This is what I've observed. The concerns have to be out there, and there generally are concerns that have come up in commission meetings. And when commissioner gets permission to direct staff to blah blah blah, that gets put on a list. And so when we're looking at codes now, some of those codes, the proposed codes, have been because of those discussions. Also, discussions with residents when they are trying to get something done, and something comes up that just doesn't make sense, or there should be an option, or a way for this to be done, but the code doesn't allow for it. Again, that's a policy change. So that comes before the commissioner saying, do you want to make this policy change, or do you want to hold the line and this is it? We don't want that to go forward. So I don't know if I answered your question. I'm sorry, John, but
no, you were going there. You were going there. But from a citizen standpoint, you're now the commissioner. If I have a code that I want to get looked at,
right,
what should I do as a citizen?
Oh, come in and make an appointment to talk with the commissioner. Yeah, and you can talk to each individual commissioner, and I know people have done that because I've had appointments with citizens that have said, oh, I talked to this commissioner. You just can't talk to all of us at the same time. So they have those separate appointments, and which is really effective. I have to tell you, that is something that people should be doing, or they pick up the phone and they call. Like I said, emails are more difficult just because, we have to reply singly, and then I guess it's okay, but I find it just so much better when people call me or say, I want to come in and take 30 minutes of your time to talk about something, because then you can have a back and forth conversation as opposed to typing, waiting for a response, typing, and then I missed the email, like, oh gee, I didn't see. So that is really effective. And I have to tell you, I'm kind of surprised at how, and I probably shouldn't say this because I'm probably gonna shoot myself after for saying this, but how few residents do contact me about things. Usually it's when it's a complaint about something, and then it's sent to all of us. But I'm talking about me individually, for someone to pick up the phone and call me, or send me an email about issues that they know that I'm passionate about, such as the environment. And being that little bug in my ear and saying, hey, did you know this, blah, blah, blah. I'm not really getting that. And I really thought I would get more of that. So I just really encourage people to be more involved in our form of government here. What's that saying? The power of people is greater than the people who are in power. And I think if people really embrace that they do have more power than I think they realize.
And I'm going to ask you this because we've been trying to figure this out for a while in Northport, how to get citizens more involved, how to get them to not just step forward and volunteer. That's not what we're saying.
Right.
It's really, how do you get people involved into politics in a city that 80% drive away to go to work. Mm-hmm. And I'm only going to use that excuse because I drove away to go to work. Almost the 22 years I've been here, I've been driving away to go to work. And the truth is I still found a way to get involved and know what the voting issues were, know who was running. We have a lot of forums, and we're going to get better at it now that we have social media and we have, the luxury of having the radio station that has live viewings on YouTube and Facebook. Right. And so there's a lot of information that can get out there quickly now. Mm-hmm. But how, and I don't love the fact that you're disappointed in this, but it's the fact that your expectation was set higher and people are not meeting your expectation because they're just not picking up the phone.
Right.
And I know, and and I both know that there are issues out there that they're concerned about.
Right.
How do you get them? What would you tell people to do to get involved, to be part of that? And Joe's question, I'm going to put Joe's question back up here in a second, so you can answer it. So, but go ahead with that.
Well, again, just keeping up first, basics. If you're talking about issues, that just keeping up the issues and sending an email, commenting. Now there's online commenting, which to me, why didn't that exist 20 something years ago? I had my share of coming home after teaching, going and sitting for hours waiting to make my 3-minute comments. And now people can just type it and it gets read by the clerk, and it's like, wow. There should be more and more comments of people doing that. So that's one thing that they can do right away. Is just go on the city's website where the agenda is posted for a particular meeting, and and they can comment online, which I believe is can only be done 24 hours before that particular meeting. I think that there is a restriction on that. So as far as how early you can go on and make the comment, but still, that's number one. Number two, I think for the city to reach out, it's when people are connected with something going on in their own neighborhood, they're more inclined to become involved with that. And that's generally when I have researched communities and where I used to live, it was always one little thing that brought people together. And
Right.
then that was like, the starting point, and that became the spark. And then they said, okay, now that we did this, let's do this and let's do this. And they became actually a force, because then they would go to the meetings and they would say, I am with the whatever neighbor, whatever little name they gave themselves. And that is actually on my list of things to do as far as creating more cohesiveness in Northport. We have, according to our comprehensive plan, all of these our neighborhoods have been defined. They're named. Nobody knows that though, and it's not referred to. And I said, you can't just refer to yourself like when people want to pick up a pie. I say, North Salford, close to the interstate. That is so nondescript and is not saying I live in the something section of town, or because when you go to other areas of the country, they have clearly defined neighborhoods, and they'll be proud to say, I'm from this part, this neighborhood, whatever the name of it is. And I just really feel that we need to do that. We really need to focus more on these little neighborhoods and have people identify with where they live, and then start with some little project in that neighborhood that they can take ownership of and take pride in.
Well, that is missing. So I'm gonna, because we were talking about neighborhoods, I'm gonna put Joe's question right back up.
Okay.
And he said, how will this Welland Park issue affect the rest of the city taxpayers?
The issue being it's in the court system now. So is he talking about whether they stay or they go?
Yeah, I'm assuming that's probably where he's going with that.
Oh,
like they're going to make a decision they're leaving.
Oh, yes. If they left, it would definitely affect the whole tax base here, because the whole justification for the annexation was to diversify the tax base. It wasn't just the commercial property. And I've shared this with you before. I was not a fan of the annexation to begin with. There was a lot of unanswered questions, but it happened. It came along, and had to deal with it. But yes, by them leaving, it would seriously impact our current financial structure of how things are getting paid for.
And if they do leave, are we going to see a tax increase because of it?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't, I don't know. I would say off the top of my head, probably, because it's
got to make that difference up somewhere, right?
That's right. It's one big pot. It's just like, your household budget. Everybody contributes, and if somebody decides I'm not paying, well, then we're gonna have to make up the difference. So I don't see how we would get around that.
So I'll let you rub your crystal ball one more time. Do you think it's going to happen?
I don't know. I really don't even want to make a prediction there. Don't know. There's again, it's in the courts, and there's all kinds of factors they have to figure out, I guess, and it's the legal people now that are dealing with it. It just would be, I think, really interesting, to put it mildly, to see either way. It would be interesting to see how it plays out.
I don't want to think the worst that's going to happen, and I think the worst would be the separation, because I think it would hurt both communities. I think it'll hurt Welland Park, along with the fact that it'll hurt Northport as a city as a whole. So I don't know if people actually are paying attention. Once again, how do we get people like Joe? Maybe Joe knows this. How do we get more people to look at this and be, bold enough to ask a question, just like he just did? Joe, if you've got an idea how to get more people attracted to the conversation we're having right here, let Alice know. Obviously, she's going to go out there and talk and do presentations about stuff, but you've got to have some frustration on your behalf, Alice, just for the mere fact that I think you came into this thinking, we're going to go ahead, we're going to move forward. There's going to be lots of people. I mean, we had a pretty decent vote and I'm not going to say we had a great vote, because I don't think we've ever had a really great turnout of voters. If we ever did, I think it would kind of blow everybody off the map.
Uh-huh.
And I say that because I wish it would happen. Because I think once people start voting and start getting involved, just with the simple thing like voting, it changes what they think about where they live.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out, how do we get people excited enough to go pull the lever or fill out an absentee ballot and get it turned in.
Right.
That's where your local decisions are impacting daily life. Yeah, the federal government, they're going to do what they're going to do. But if we don't encourage people to get involved on the local level, and now you were part, and you still are, for the trees, and you did that group. When you built that group, it just magically appeared, right? You didn't have to work towards it, right?
No, it didn't magically appear.
I think that was coming. Go ahead.
I started with 6 people. We met in the Northport Library in 1997, and it grew from that. And then, as a nonprofit, we knew we were limited. And I think I shared this with you. In 2002, I went through the steps to put a referendum on the ballot. Now, we had to create a political committee because we're a nonprofit. We can't be doing, voting things. So we formed a PAC, Northport Citizens for Tree Protection, and we proposed minimum tree protection standards to be added to our city charter. And we did this based on what Jacksonville, Florida accomplished. And I pretty much used theirs as a model. And that was in 2002. So I want you to think about that year, because that was our last building boom. So,
right, it was.
So talk about going into the belly of the beast. Okay.
Right. Right.
I thought this, at least if nothing else, it put the issue out there, and it was defeated. But that whole thing, got people involved and really gave people the reassurance that, like I just said, the power of the people is greater than the people in power, that you do have the power to make change. You do. And if there's something that you don't think is changing fast enough for you, because actually that was prompted by the fact that Northport did not have a tree ordinance. I served on a number of tree recommendation protection committees. We made our recommendations, and it was like, thank you very much. And they went, in file 13 over there. So I said, what else can we do? And just by researching and talking to all kinds of people outside of Northport, that was, somebody said, you can, through petition, propose your own referendum for your city charter. It doesn't have to go through the city, the charter review board. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do that. That people, then you feel more empowered, and you feel like you don't feel hopeless and helpless. And that, to me, I was still very defeated and deflated. And I still remember my mother telling me, but Alice, you did the right thing. That's what you have to remember. And I said, you're right. That was the right thing to do. And, I lost, but it was still a positive thing that came out of that. And that people need to realize that not think, well, it's just me. You're right. It is you. And you need to get out there and be involved, no matter how it is. It doesn't have to be on a grandiose scale, but anything that you can do to make a difference in this world, do it. Just do it. And if it doesn't exist, create it. Do it yourself, because that's what I did with People for Trees. It didn't exist. John, I have people who still call me from, not just from around Florida, but from the country. I have people calling me from other parts of the country that ask me about, how did you do that? How did you manage that? Charlotte County, when they were doing their Parkside project, they called me for their tree planting. They planted all these trees on Aaron. I think it's Aaron Street, where the cultural center is located. And they said, hey, you did street trees in Northport. How did you do that? And they did plant their street trees. I managed to see that last year. I couldn't believe it. They're just gorgeous. But this you start one little thing, and even if you yourself, you don't think that you've been successful, someone's going to pick up on it and say, you know what, somebody tried doing that. Let me start where they left off and see if I can carry it a little further. So that, to me, is what people really need to realize.
So this would be one of those situations where if no one ever starts it, it can never even get started.
No, it's never going to happen.
A lot of people have a lot of things to say.
Yep.
When you ask them, okay.
Yep.
And then the really simple question is, all right, so do you want to help change this? Well, no, I don't have time. Okay.
Right.
But there's a group of people that you could talk to that would help kind of get people motivated. Yeah. And that's what you did. I mean, I jokingly use my Ohio State Buckeyes as something, because I started with 6 people. It sounds familiar, right?
Right.
I started with 6 people, and now we have over 100 people come to a football game. Okay, now we're talking about football. Okay. Right. Yeah, it's something fun, but people are taking their time out of their day to come spend 4 hours to watch football.
Right.
I got to tell you, if there's something majorly important, you're gonna give 15 or 20 minutes of your time to get something accomplished. And with what we have today, with Zoom meetings and different ways of communicating,
right?
These meetings don't. I mean, my wife is doing some things, and they do Zoom meetings all the time.
Right.
And this is post-COVID, of course, because StreamYard is what we're using here, and people are using all kinds of technology now to get things out there.
Right. And I'm still having my People for Trees board meetings through Zoom because it's so much more convenient. The board members can tune it in, they can shut off their video, get dinner ready, whatever it is they have to do, but still be part of the meeting. And so there's really no excuse for people not to be able to get together. And I also like to think of when I talk to people, I said, well, like you said, people like to complain. They will, rattle on about things that bother them, but they're making a point. I would like to see people turn that around and think in terms of making a difference. Like, okay, what would you do? What do you think should be done for the good of everybody? Because and sometimes I talk to people that they're only thinking about me, myself, and I. How this is affecting me. But you have to think of other people in your community, or your neighborhood. How is that going to affect everybody. And is that really what you want? Sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for, because it has to apply across the board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
With everything that you're doing at City Hall now, what are some of the big projects that are coming up that are happening in Northport that you kind of feel like people should hear about?
We're projects as far as what, brick and mortar, or just
Well, we have growth going on, but you guys voted for the Warm Middle Springs,
yeah,
the water and the sewer to go through.
yeah.
Do we have an update on when that's going to happen?
I don't remember what it is. Somebody just asked. We just had that asked and answered not too long ago. And I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front
That's all
of
right.
me.
That's all right.
But it is going along. Very, very happy with that. The city commissioners, we added, or we proposed differences in those activity centers. And again, I don't like that word, that term, activity center, because it
Right.
does. It makes it sound like we're building another community center there. But those are the business. They should be just called business centers, I think, or something. But we went through the list of what's allowed and not allowed and made some adjustments for those business centers, such as at Toledo Blade and Price, and where and Price and Sumter, and in that area, to allow different types of businesses that at one time weren't going to be allowed because of our zoning. So that's coming down the pike, and people should be aware of that, and that could bring in some really interesting businesses. We're talking about impact fees again, that haven't been raised. Historically, the city has never put impact fees at 100%. That they just did put them at 100%. I think, what was it, last year or the year before? But it was based on the 2011 study. So you're talking about prices from 2011 finally get put into place 10 years later. I mean, and people want to know why Price Boulevard is like it is. Well, when you don't bite the bullet and say, growth really needs to pay for itself. This is what's going to happen. And impact fees are a one-shot deal. You don't get a chance to collect them again. So if you don't collect them at the time of development, you just lost that opportunity forever. And
So let's step back here real quick, because I always like the educational side of it. What is an impact fee? Tell the people what that is and how that affects them.
yeah, impact fees are they determine there's certain areas such as transportation, uh, open green space. There's certain things that they figure out. These things will be impacted by adding either a new house or new commercial development, and to what extent is that going to impact. And the thing is that whatever that cost is going to be should be borne by the new development. It should never become the burden of existing residents. That's the theory, John.
Oh, nice. There it is.
Never really happens, because when you think about it, okay, River Road, there's a prime example, and I've mentioned this before. When I first moved to Northport, River Road was 2 lanes and nothing but cow pastures out there. That's all it was. Okay, it was a straight run. Now still 2 lanes, and you have all this development. Why I mean, that development should have been paying in order to improve that road as it was necessary. But it wasn't. And yes, that's county, that's not Northport, but just the
Correct.
fact that traditionally and historically, Florida has been always behind in really collecting the impact fees that are necessary. So that's why the burden gets put on residents all the time. So that's the impact fees that we're going through, that the study has said this is where you should be. Also, what happens is, for example, in that 2011 study, in fact, I think it was before 2011. It was a study before that, the commission, because this was during the boom. This was during the big boom, I believe. They said, let's tier it. Instead of just putting it at 100%. And again, you had building going on like crazy here. Let's put a third. Let's just put a third of the impact fee, and then in a year we'll do another third. Well, then we had the bust. Everything collapsed
Right.
in 2008. So they were like, oh, okay, now we can't do that because, everything's busted. So we should have no impact fees. And, that's absurd. Because, again, I've done enough research and I'm sure you have too, that impact fees do not determine, building at all. The market determines that. And when it was ready to rebound, it rebounded. And,
Yep.
that's how it goes. And yet
Well, we have the rooftops now. We have rooftops now, and
Yeah.
everybody's looking at us because we
Yeah.
have commercial places to build,
Right.
and we have rooftops to support anything that moves here.
You're right. You're right.
Like the first steakhouse that moves here, it's going to be busy.
Yes.
I'm just telling you. I'm dumbfounded that it's not here yet.
Right.
But it's amazing to me.
Right.
Now, even with COVID, it's amazing. But
right. And they brought up these statistics, these figures that Sarasota County is the fastest growing region in the state. I think that's what they said. And Northport is the fastest growing area in Sarasota County. And they did this projected growth pattern that we have outpaced the rest of the county, and we will continue to outpace the rest of the county for the next, I think they have it the next 40 years or something. And I'm thinking, so why do we think that a commercial developer that can come into this hot bursting area is going to say, oh, I'm going to walk away from this project because your impact fees are, a couple $100,000 more than Charlotte County. I don't, and any developer that's worth his weight in gold is not going to do that. That if this is the place, like you said, we have the rooftops and they're continuing, those rooftops are continuing to go out there. Why would somebody say, oh yeah, I'm going to walk away from that and I'll go somewhere where it's cheaper, but it doesn't have that kind of growth. That this just doesn't happen. I mean, like you said, development follows rooftops. When I first moved here 30 years ago, there wasn't even not one fast food restaurant.
Right.
Why would they come to Northport? I mean, there was nobody. I hate to say that, but the population was like 15,000. Yes, we went to Port Charlotte for all of our stores because they said there wasn't enough people here for that. So commercial development is going to come in where they know they're going to have the volume and they're going to get the revenue that they need, like you said. And if they feel it's here, they're not going to walk away from that opportunity at all.
No. And I it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Because at the end of the day, there is some infrastructure here that needs some attention. And if we don't have the impact fees to help that, I don't know what we're going to do. Because everybody's talking about Price Boulevard. And I want to make sure I've only got 2 minutes left, but they're all talking about Price Boulevard and they're talking about water and sewer. Well, last time I checked, it takes money to do all those things.
Oh yeah.
And we're talking, a lot of it is matching funds. Mm-hmm. So we don't have matching funds coming from the government right now.
Right.
To do anything. And we don't have the funds to do it to begin with. Do we?
Right.
I mean.
Right.
I'm just looking at it constructively. So if we don't start analyzing some things a little different, and collecting some of these impact fees, I tend to believe that we're in that same position too.
Right. Yeah. And you talked about matching funds that, Price Boulevard has a master plan. I understand that was approved. And as long as there is a master plan, then you can start saying when those funding opportunities come up to match it with. And I understand there is some infrastructure money coming from Washington. And again, as long as we have a plan, we can start putting our hands out and say, here we go. We're we're ready to go. And this is what we can put up. But if we have nothing to put up, they're just going to give it to somebody else. Yeah.
And they're going to utilize it.
Yep.
All right. Well, listen, it was great having you on the show. It was a very, very fast hour. Yes. I didn't think it would go that fast. It tends to all the time.
Yeah, but, you're great to talk to, John. No wonder you do this.
I love it. It's a good time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your time. I really do. You have a great rest of your week, and go do some talking and some voting.
Okay. And you too.
All
And
right.
get some moisturizer on that red face.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Well, that's the concert. That's the concert. All right. You guys have a good day. This is John Rawlings with Alice White saying thanks, and pay attention to Real Talk every Monday and Friday, 3 or 4 o'clock. Thank you so much.